All right, hello everybody. My name is Peter, and this is What I Think About Art, the only TV show dedicated to documenting one man's journey to try to think things about art. All right? And it can get difficult sometimes. I understand that, to think things about art. It's a wacky, wild world out there. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's going on. Is this good art? Is this bad art? Does it really matter? Right? Am I supposed to like this just because everyone else likes it or because it's expensive or famous? Or should I make my own decision? Look, I'm going to tell you what I think. And if you want to make things easier for yourself, you can just agree with everything I say. There is no right or wrong. You don't have to like things just because you don't know anything about it and everyone else knows things about it and they say they like it. Okay? The theme for our episode today is famous art by women, all right? And I don't really care whether art is done by men or women or anything in between. It's just a category, all right? It's just what I typed in Google or something to find some art pieces to look at and to think things about, all right? So let's get started. Our first piece here seems to be some sort of maybe duck-billed sod. This piece by Helen Frankenthaler. She was born in 1928, died 2011, just recently. This piece is called Mountains and Sea, so maybe it's... I think that's maybe a little more accurate like that. It's a little bit more mountainy, a little bit more sea-y. Apparently she did this after a trip to Nova Scotia or something, and she did this type of painting called color fields painting. It's okay. This painting, okay, I reserve the right to change any of my thoughts about art after seeing it in person, because I think it's totally different. Because this one, for example, would have been, the real thing is 10 feet wide. And of course, proportionally taller as well, okay? That'd be a totally different, and these chunks of color really would have seemed like fields of color. Standing there in front of it, I could have curled up in here, right? That would have been totally different. Okay, she painted with unprimed canvas. She watered down her oil paints. She watered them down with turpentine, and then she would apply it to the canvas in an almost watercolory sort of fashion, which was kind of... No, I guess people didn't do that in the time. I don't know. One thing we'll run into a lot here, looking at these pieces and pieces that are famous, is that sometimes they seem to be famous just because they do something that wasn't done before, right? They change the norm. They branch out in some new direction, and that's why they're famous. Okay? And sometimes you'll say, I don't like that painting. And then other people will be like, yeah, but... And then they'll give you a whole bunch of history behind the painting, which, the history can make paintings more interesting, and they can change your mind whether you like it or not. But you don't have to be guilted into liking a painting just because it has some rich history, okay? You can still look at it and decide you don't like the way it looks, and that's fine. Art can stand just on its visual appearance as well. That's okay. That's what I think. Speaking of which, this one doesn't do a whole lot for me. I do like these chunks of blue here. Okay, I like those. Excuse me. They do look like they'd be really fun to splash on there. I'm sure she must have used like a huge mop or something, because if this is a 10-foot painting, these are really big chunks of paint, and I think this is like charcoal here. I mean, she was just really into it, you can tell. I don't even know how you get a 10-foot canvas. That's crazy. Obviously, she grew up like on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, daughter of like a Supreme Court judge or something, very well-to-do. And so she probably didn't have any problem getting 10-foot canvases. Not that even that affects how the art looks. I don't know. Maybe it does. It's all tied together. Who knows? Let's go on to the next piece. I think maybe the part that bothers me most about this one is the shade of the background, which maybe this reproduction of it on this piece of paper isn't entirely accurate. It's just like a very uneasy shade of tan, very fleshy. I don't know. This corner up here is extremely fleshy to me. Almost looks like a weird little wound right there. I'm not sure. I don't like. I would never hang this anyway. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. I don't like it. All right. Here, my friends, is a piece by the esteemed female artist known as Georgia O'Keeffe. This piece is called Gray Lines with Black, Blue, and Yellow. I feel like this piece in particular, this print of it might be a little bit oversaturated. And it's a little splotchy here where I spilled some water on it, but it's okay. I have very mixed feelings about Georgia O'Keeffe and her paintings like this. She has a lot of things like this that look like flowers, or maybe she's bad at painting flowers and they accidentally look kind of like vaginas, or she's bad at painting vaginas and they look kind of like flowers, or she was just happy writing that line. She also painted a lot of things based on New Mexican landscapes, some skyscrapers and stuff. The landscapes I don't like as much. There's a lot of things that just look like a longhorn skull just kind of floating in the air, maybe with some cactuses in the background, and it's all just kind of vague and undefined, and it doesn't do a whole lot for me. I do like these types of paintings of hers better, just because I like her philosophy. Well, I don't know if she had a philosophy, but she had tried to adhere to some mantra that went along the lines of filling space in a beautiful way. And this is somewhat beautiful to me. I guess what's really funny to me is this. I guess she's pretty famous for drawing things that look like vaginas, right? And all these art magazines, and publications, like they'll write about her, right? And they'll say something like this, that, sexuality, but they'll say that she draws things that resemble female anatomy, right? But what does that mean? An elbow is part of female anatomy. A chin? An eyeball? Are these the prudes? The art magazines? These are the ones beating around the bush? I don't understand. Anyways, I say Georgia O'Keeffe, these type of paintings, this is pretty to me. I like the way these colors are combined. I draw these kind of shapes a lot too. I find myself doing that, just the way the lines curve up and around. And she combines the colors well. She's not my least favorite artist. She's not my favorite artist. It's just like okay to me. I used to go and look at some of her paintings at Artist 2 Chicago sometimes, and it was like, just like to look at them every now and then I was set. Definitely like her flowers more than her skulls for some reason. I don't know why. Usually I like skulls. No, I like flowers too. I'm allowed to like two things, right? All right. All right, this painting is called Judith and Her Maidservant by Artemisia Gentileschi, or something like that. She was a Baroque artist and lived in ancient Italy or Rome or something like that. And obviously, I think it's not a surprise to hear that this was a difficult time for women to bust into the art business and become famous, well-to-do, to get, important clientele and stuff like that. But she did all of this. She painted lots of pictures of like strong women suffering, getting stuff done. She obviously had a very troubled background, which probably contributed to a lot of the way. It was a well-to-do background, but still very troubled. She wasn't pampered at some points of her life. I don't know. Go read her Wikipedia article. There's some very sad things in there. And we look at these two. They're like, what? No, we didn't do nothing. We're just going to go take out the laundry, regular women stuff like you always wanted us to do. But really, they've got, they just beheaded some dude. They got his noggin in a basket over here. They're going to go dispose of it or maybe put it on a stake somewhere. They're doing crazy stuff. I liked it. This is a cool painting, because they're both like looking over here, plenty of motion. They're leaning, This is all the kind of stuff they point. This is all the kind of stuff they point out to you if you take like an art appreciation course. They're like, look at all the movement in the painting. They're all looking off the frame, so the painting's like, right? Like those art appreciation courses, it's so weird. They're like, appreciate it for this. I don't know. Can you just look at it and be like, I like it or I don't like it? I mean, I like it. I mean, it's a little bit, if you go to any like art museum that has this sort of painting in it, it's like 1 in a million. But it's kind of, it tells a cool story. It's kind of exciting. I like her sword over her shoulder. Sword even has like a little face on it. I like the sword. I like the head in the basket, the blood dripping out. I don't know. It's cool. It's cool. I feel like I like Artemisia's story more than I like this actual painting. The painting's cool. Artemisia was cooler because she was back there in olden times kicking butt and painting a lot of sweet paintings, getting it done. All right? That's cooler to me. Also, she's very good at painting cloth, which is one of my favorite things to look at. Drawings and paintings of cloth that are well done. Love that. The wrinkles, I mean, it's just like so cool. I feel like there's whole classes you could study that. All right, this piece is called Grainfield by Berthe Morisot, I think you call her. A French painter born in 1841. She was what you'd call an impressionist, and rightfully so. I'm very impressed. It's a cool painting. I like it, but it could just be because I'm such a fan of yellow, and I don't know. It's warm. It makes me happy, especially under this cold, gray, foggy sky. I can't actually tell if this is a scarecrow or a person. I think maybe it's supposed to be a person trudging through the field. This lady, Berthe, is it pronounced Berthe? Berthe? French is weird to me. She was friends with Edouard Manet. She married Edouard Manet's brother. I think this painting is actually blown up to be bigger than it would be in real life. It'd really only be about just over 2 feet wide. It's kind of plain. Like, is it so weird that I feel like this painting probably took way less time than like this painting, right? Like this is so detailed, it's got such perfectly crafted humans here. All the lines and light looks almost dangerously photorealistic. But then here, you can see every brush stroke, right? You can tell that it's paint on a canvas. For some reason, that appeals so much more to me. At least in this case, it's not all the way across the board. I don't want to make any generalizations and say that always the sloppier it is, the better it is. But, maybe they had art for different reasons back then, right? To preserve events, so they could look back on them. They didn't have photographs back then. Or, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm sure some people know, and they want to tell me. But maybe this is more like a little representation of a foggy dreamscape or a memory in time. And it's a little bit better if you, something about impressionism, I don't know. I think this is better. And apparently it does matter whose art is better because there are so many art competitions out there in the world right now. Art's about winning and losing, apparently. Oh, what a pretty painting. All right, this one was painted by Elizabeth Louise Vige Lebrun, who was born in about 1755 and painted a lot of pretty pictures. They all look really good, actually. Very clear, just like crisp looking, almost fairy tale-ish, some of them. And she's famous because she painted a lot of pictures for Marie Antoinette, who was even more famous. She started painting from a very young age. Her father taught her, but then her father died when she was like 12 years old, and then she got this stepdad she didn't like because her stepdad started wearing all her dad's stuff even though it didn't fit him, and she's like, I don't like my stepdad, he sucks, But then she started practicing painting portraits and was doing it professionally from a very young age until her studio got shut down because she didn't have a license or a permit or something, because back then apparently there were these guilds, these academies that ran the whole thing, like artists' unions of some sort, right? And she wasn't a member of one. Eventually, however, she did become very well known. She became a member of an academy, and when you became a member of an academy, you had to submit a painting as your entry piece or whatever. And she painted an allegorical painting called Peace Bringing Back Abundance, right? And it was beautiful, and it was great, but the academy didn't know where to hang it because back then there were only two categories of art: portraits and historical art. Historical art being the best kind of art ever. And so she had this allegorical painting. They just didn't hang it up everywhere because it didn't fit into one of their two categories. And so even though she right off the bat was breaking a lot of trends, doing things differently, at one point she painted a picture of her with her daughter, and she was just smirking a little bit, like she wasn't frowning or something. You can see here this person smirking a little bit. This, back then, they probably would have considered this. They thought it was awful. They thought it was the worst. It was just an affront. It was just, spitting in the face of everything they stood for. They thought this was a huge toothy grin. They thought that smiling and showing your teeth in a painting, they said they found no precedent for it among the ancients, and therefore it was the worst thing ever. Okay, it was terrible. But she kept going on and painted lots and lots of paintings where almost every one of the faces looked exactly the same. I mean, maybe that was just her thing, painting. I mean, you figure out how to draw a face once, why change it when everyone loves it, right? Why do it any differently? If it's a pretty face and you tell someone, hey, I painted you, that's you, and people look at it and say, that's me, that person is beautiful. You painted that face so prettily, and that's me. I love it. I'll pay you for it. She had it figured out, all right? Or maybe maybe she only chose clients who had a perfect facial type, who she knew how to draw. I don't know. Anyways, she's obviously very talented. She painted Marie Antoinette tons of times. People thought she was the official Marie Antoinette portrait painter, even before she really was, just because she did it so many times. And, seems like a cool person. She did it up. Once again, I enjoy the cloth here, the veil. Very cool. Great effect. All right. This precious painting is the work of famous Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. You've probably heard of before. There's documentaries, on Netflix about her. And this painting is called The Love Embrace of the Universe, the Earth, Mexico, myself, Diego, and Senor Xolotl, or something like that. There's a lot of weird X's in this, it's like a Mayan language or something. How do you pronounce those X's? I'm just not sure. Anyways, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. I like the content of this painting. I like it, but I don't know, I don't like the style of these hands, but I like the style of some of this other stuff, like this cactuses. This almost looks like a weird artichoke or something, like the roots. The background looks cool. It's kind of like a weird yin-yang thing going on here. Got a lactating nipple. Looks like Frida here holding Diego in her arms. Kind of like a fetal Diego. He's holding a flame. He's got a third eye. Some sleeping rodent. All sorts of crazy symbolic stuff going on here. Which, do you think, if I walked up and saw this in a gallery, do you think there would be some sort of weight, some onus on me to further, look into what it meant? Should I go ask the artist what the stuff meant? Should I look it up on Wikipedia? Or can I just look at it and feel, right? I'm allowed to just look at it and feel and think, maybe this means that, maybe this means that. Once the artist puts it out there, they have no more control. if they don't write it on here what this stuff means, then we get to guess, and we're just as right as anybody, right? You can't, after the artist submits it, they can say, this means that, but it doesn't really matter anymore. So I don't know what this means. I don't know what this means. I don't think it really means anything except to think it looks pretty cool. I like the kind of pyramidal shape of it. I like all of it. Ugh, my tummy's grumbling. But worse than tummy grumblings, Frida had a pretty rough life. She was disabled by polio as a child. And then when she was 18 years old or so, she got in a traffic accident. She spent most of her life in great pain, pretty much paralyzed. And she was in a long-term, off and on, very heated, passionate relationship with famous muralist Diego Rivera. You guys know what I'm talking about. He's probably in all sorts of other documentaries as well. I like her. I like like I said, I like what's in the paintings or the actual style of the painting. The style of some of it bothers me a little bit. For some reason, it just doesn't click with me. But I like this weird stuff. I feel like I should. This is like weird album art material, I feel like. And I love album art. I love band names. I love album art. I love song names. And I feel like this could be part of it. I don't know if that kind of lowers it at all for you. It doesn't for me. Okay. This is probably my favorite part right here. This little, if I had to crop it out, of course, it's not that unnatural, but I would zoom in on the center of the painting. I don't know. She's pretty cool. All right, this one is by great artist Joan Mitchell. This piece is called Marlon, and in real life it's about 8 feet tall or something like that. It's huge. I'd love to go stand in front of this one. First stand like really close to it, as close as the people at the museum would let me get. Maybe wait till they're not looking, get a little bit closer till it's like a little bit out of focus. You can just feel it, kind of see like the actual, maybe see like a little brush hair that came off the brush and it's stuck in the paint. I'd love to see that. Then stand a little bit farther away till it's just all of my field of vision. And then stand on the other side of the room, right? Get several different experiences of it, okay? That's why I love to do big paintings. They're great for that. Joan Mitchell, born in Chicago, Illinois, it's a while ago. I think she died in 92 or something like that. The daughter of a dermatologist and a poet. And she likes doing this kind of stuff. This, I guess, it's called Marlon. I guess is maybe supposed to capture the death throes of a fish, perhaps. And it looks like fun. Not the fish dying, of course, but the creation of such a piece. A very similar piece, titled Untitled, sold for like $11.9 million in 2014 at auction, which was a record for a female artist. When you title something Untitled, is it just you don't title it, so then they title it Untitled? Why don't they just say this piece does not have a title? Or does the artist say when they write Untitled? I don't know how that works. Because I don't know if it's supposed to have a title. What if it's supposed to be purely titleless? I don't know. It's okay. Anyway, she spent most of her life in France, despite being born in Chicago. The first lady we looked at, Helen Frankenthaler, one of her contemporaries. I don't know if they actually met. They happened at the same time. This lady, Joan Mitchell, she's known as one of the leading artists in the New York School, which is this whole big thing. I don't know, that kind of boggles my mind, that whole thing. It seems like kind of it's too good to be true sort of thing to be alive and doing stuff then. Anyways, I like this piece a lot. These blues make me very happy. These blues here, I probably don't have a wall big enough to hang this in, the real one, but the blues, these greens are amazing. These kind of seafoam greens here, the splatters, just like the twist, like you can just, and then it's just, I like it a lot. I do. And I don't know. I don't usually always go for this kind of weird abstract, splishy, splashy, paint squeezy stuff where it might as well have been finger paint. But this one makes me happy. I like looking at this one. I do. Might hang this one up on my wall somewhere, get a couple of thumbtacks. Right, this is A Girl in a Blue Armchair, as you can see, by Mary Cassatt, I don't know, American painter who also spent most of her life in France, I think Paris, painting pictures. She was friend of Edgar Degas, who is also a painter. They were just good friends their whole lives. I like this painting because it kind of captures a weird little feeling that I think we've all felt before. Like her parents are probably off talking somewhere and she is just sitting here bored out of her mind, waiting for it to be over. I like that all this other stuff is included in the background. Like sometimes when I feel like you paint something here in the foreground and you're like, should I include this? You're trying to figure out what to include in the background, like where do you chop it off on the side? Like this is kind of weirdly chopped. And I feel like Mary here made all of the right decisions. It's kind of a tease. Like I feel like when it's like cut like this, sometimes it makes you wonder more. And I feel like anything that keeps you looking at the picture, at the painting for longer, being like, why doesn't it just include the rest of this chair? Like, why is this dog so painfully close to the edge? Stuff that bothers me a little bit also makes me like the painting a little bit more sometimes. The chairs are so detailed. The floor is so plain. Mary had this little studio, and then like a 5-minute walk away. Edgar had his studio, and sometimes he'd come over and give her some little pointers. The studio doesn't look that great now. It's just like a run-down little part of Paris. But I feel like it used to be pretty cool. I don't know, it just seems like it would have been sweet. Just hang out in Paris, paint pictures. I like it. I can just see her painting. I like it. I like it a lot. Makes me a little bit whimsical. Sometimes, you reserve the right. Like I said, don't let people bully you into liking or not liking paintings. I like this one because of the other things it makes me think of outside of it. The painter, the time period, all this other stuff. And then sometimes I don't like paintings because I don't care about the other stuff that makes it popular. It's okay. Mary was also a contemporary of Berthe Morisot, the other lady we just looked at earlier. Here is a funky one. I'll tell you right now, I don't like it, but I think maybe you're not supposed to like it, right? There's a lot of unlikable stuff in this painting. This painting is called A Warning to Mother, and you can see these words right here around the middle, surrounding a cross skull and fork and knife. And this one is painted by Leonardo Acton, an English painter, surrealist, and novelist. She was English, but she spent most of her life in Mexico City. She's part of a lot of women's movements, stuff like that. Yeah, like I said, I don't like this painting. I do like some stuff about it. I like how this guy was rendered. The top of his head feels a little bit Salvador Dalian to me, these details. So actually, a lot of it does a little bit. Of course, he doesn't own this whole genre, this category, surrealism and all that, so she can do her own thing here. These pieces down here are spread out like maybe a child that was playing with some toys, They put out all their toys like they're about to reenact some crazy thing with them. They're just kind of placed here. And maybe that's on purpose. Maybe they're supposed to look like toys. I don't know if they're supposed to be people or toys. There's a cat with a person's face. Is this mother coming down from the top? I don't know. Part of the still life here. And I don't understand the symbolism of all of this. I just don't know. I think maybe my least favorite thing about it is how it looks like the background was painted with ketchup. It just hurts my eyes a little bit, that's all. If it had been a little bit less harsh to look at, I would like it more, but maybe it's supposed to be harsh. It's supposed to make me uncomfortable. And that's fine. If, maybe she accomplished exactly what she was aiming for. Not all art has to be likable. It doesn't have to always make you feel cozy and comfortable and happy. It's okay to make something abrasive. And it makes me not happy. I don't like it. That's fine. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean it doesn't take skill to make, right? Doesn't mean it wasn't important. I just don't like it, that's all. She met Max Ernst a couple times, which is cool. She had some associations with him. And also on the sadder side of things, she had a lot of anxiety, mental, delusional problems, and they were so much worse at dealing with those type of things than they are even now. So they even gave her electroshock therapy at one point, I think. A lot of weird drugs. She had a lot of breakdowns. So, maybe art was just one of her ways to deal with that, letting it all out onto the canvas, which I think can be really helpful sometimes. So you'll let it all out, girl. Put it on the paper, the canvas. Let's go. All right, this is our last one today by Agnes Martin. This piece is called Morning, Morning. And I like it a lot. More than anything else, I like Agnes Martin. She's probably the artist out of all 10 of these that we've talked about today that I feel like I relate to the most. She's only one of these artists that didn't come from a very well-to-do family, wasn't coached in art from a very young age. She did graduate college, unlike me, so we're a little bit different that way. But she was just doing art because she liked art. She was very troubled. She moved around a lot in her life. She was born in Canada. I'm Canadian, even though I wasn't born in Canada. So we've got that. So as you can see, her art is very minimalistic. But she's not a minimalist because she puts a lot of detail into her drawings. There are a lot of lines here. People often described her as a minimalist and even exhibited her work along other minimalists, but she referred to herself as more of an abstract surrealist, which I don't know. Once again, I'm always bad at genres and fitting things into categories. We got to sort everything out. We can't just... I'd rather we just lay it all out on the floor and look at it instead of putting everything into bins. I don't know why we have to do that all the time, but it's fine. And so this piece, she did a lot of these grids on canvas. This would normally be about 6 feet square, right? So it'd be pretty big, and she'd do these canvas. She'd do these washes of gray, and then cover them in pencil-lined grids. Sometimes she'd a ruler, sometimes she wouldn't, I think. And I think it'd be really interesting to go up and look at closely. It kind of gives you a kind of a misty, foggy feeling. This one is called Morning. Sometimes she'd call them Happy Holidays or I Love the Whole World. Agnes lived in New York for a while, up in some loft somewhere, doing very artsy, artistic things, doing, making art, collaborating and stuff with other artists. Who knows if she was happy? She always seemed like kind of a troubled person. At one point, she also did, or at least was told to do some sort of electroshock therapy. She had schizophrenia her whole life, may have been a closeted lesbian. So she was dealing with all these different things, right? And at one point, she just up and left New York, maybe because she got told that her building was being destroyed. So she just left, right? Didn't tell anyone. She just left. She drove around the country for 18 months, right? She just stopped doing art that she'd been doing for so long. And after 18 months, she settled in New Mexico and built herself a house out of adobe, right? And then a little later, she moved again to somewhere else in New Mexico. And there again, she built herself another house out of adobe. And eventually, after some number of years, she started doing art again. And she just started doing these very simple things. very simple. She's drawing lines, and she didn't really interact with the art world at all. It took a long time before she ever did an exhibition again where her art was displayed. And even until the time she died, she did some interviews for like some sort of documentary right before she died. She said she had never even read a newspaper for the last 50 years. She probably didn't even know TV existed. I don't know. I'm attracted to her in a spiritual sort of way, I think. I like her lines, her little grids, her empty Excel spreadsheets. They appeal to me. Obviously, she was a big fan of Mark Rothko. She praised him for having reached zero so that nothing can stand in the way of truth. And someone said of her art that it was an essay in discretion on inwardness and silence. I feel like we can all learn a little bit more about that, right? Anyways, that's all for today. A lot of great art. Look, all of the pieces we looked at today were amazing, but I didn't like all of them. I did like some of them. Some of them I like the artist more than the art they created. That's okay. Some of them I like the art they created more than the artist. It's fine. If you want to have some free opinions ready to go, prepackaged, take mine, run with them. If you want to find out more for yourself, for your own opinions, I have some links in the description. We can look these things up on Wikipedia, find out some cool stuff about them, and that's cool too. So wish you all the best. See y'all later, and go watch the previous episodes if you haven't already. Goodbye, everybody. Take it easy. Good to see y'all. Peace.